Hi everyone, so now we're going to be talking about how to graph linear equations. In the last video, we talked about how to find the slope from a graph or from 2 points. Now we're going to use that slope to actually graph a line. And the big equation that we want to understand is the slope-intercept form, which is this y equals mx plus b. In the slope-intercept form, you have a slope and then an intercept. So your slope is represented by the m, and we've talked about how to find that once again on a graph. And then the b represents the y-intercept, and the y-intercept on a graph is where it crosses the y-axis. If you remember, there are two axes on a graph. So this is your graph, this is your x-axis, the one that goes from left to right. Then the one that goes up and down is your y-axis. So the y-intercept is where it crosses that up and down line. The easiest way to do these is to look at the question, find your slope and y-intercept first, and then graph. So let's just start going over some examples. The first example is y equals 2x plus 1. So the first thing I'm going to do is find my slope and my y-intercept. My slope is always the number that's attached to the x or in front of the x. So in this case, my slope, or m, is equal to 2 because that's the number that's attached to x. Then we're going to find our y-intercept, which is b, and our y-intercept is the thing that's not attached to the x. It's usually on the behind the x or the thing without the x. In this case, it's 1. Okay, so now when we graph it, let me just draw a graph right here. When we graph it, what's going to happen is you want to start with your y-intercept. In this case, our y-intercept is 1. So what I'm going to do is start at the origin, which is right in the middle of the graph, and go up 1. And we went up 1 because it's a positive 1. If it was a minus 1, we'd go down 1. Then from there, we have our y-intercept. Now we're going to use our slope. And if you remember, slope, the word equation for slope is rise over run. So the slope of 2 really tells me is I could rewrite it as like 2 over 1, which tells me that I go up 2 and over 1. Now, what I'm going to do is start at my y-intercept that I've already made and go up 2 and over 1 and then put a point. So now I have 2 points. I could potentially just draw a line through there. We could also continue to use that slope. And from this point that I just created, I could go up 2 and over 1 again. I could even go back to my y-intercept and continue it, but go backwards. So instead of going up 2 and to the right 1, I could go down 2 and backwards 1. Notice that it keeps the same line. We just did 4 points right here, but really all you need is 2 points to figure out, oh, this is the way that the line's going to go, and then you can just draw your line through it. So now I can draw my line, and this is my graph. Okay, let's try another example. So the second example is y equals negative 2/5 x plus 3. Once again, I'm going to start by finding my slope and my y-intercept. So my slope is the number that's in front of the x, which is negative 2/5. And then my y-intercept, which is b, is the thing without the x, which is 3. So let me draw my graph. Okay, now we're going to start with our y-intercept, which is 3, which means from my origin, or from the very middle of that graph where the x and y-axis cross, I'm going to go up 3 because it's a positive 3. Then from there, my slope is negative 2/5. Once again, my slope equation is rise over run. So because it's negative, instead of going up 2, I'm going to go down 2. So I'm going to go down 2 and over 5. And I get that point. So once again, I could continue to go with that pattern, but because I have 2 points, I know what's going to, generally speaking, what's going to happen. And I can start just drawing that line. You can use a ruler to draw that line to make it a little bit more straight. Or you can continue with the points, whatever makes the most sense to you. Okay, let's go through the next example. In this example, it is y equals negative 3x. Now, here's the deal. This one doesn't have a y-intercept. And the reason why I know it doesn't have a y-intercept is because it doesn't have a number that's not attached to the x. So if that freaks you out or doesn't make sense to you, we could potentially write this as y is equal to negative 3x plus 0. Because when I add 0 to something, it doesn't change the value of it. But it can kind of be like a placeholder 0 or something to show, okay, the y-intercept is 0. Okay, so now we're going to find our y-intercept and our slope. We'll start with our slope. Our slope in this case is -3. That's the number that's attached to the x. And then our y-intercept, like we just talked about, would be 0. That's the number that doesn't have the x. So let me draw a graph here. And the y-intercept is 0. So I don't go up or down. Because it's 0, I'm just going to put a point right in the center. Then my slope is -3. And remember, when it's a whole number, we can put it over 1. So it's like -3 over 1, which means I go down 3 and over 1. So from this point in the center, I'm going to go down 3 and over 1, and there's my point. If I wanted to continue, I could keep on going, or I could go up 3 and backwards 1, and it keeps that line. And now I can draw a line through my points. Obviously, that wasn't like super straight, but you get the idea. Okay, and then the last one is kind of a trick or a special case. This is x is equal to 4. Now, notice that this one is x equals instead of y equals. So when you get an equation that just says x equals, that is a straight vertical line. It doesn't have a slope and it doesn't have a y-intercept because it's x equals, not y equals. And so when it doesn't have a slope or a y-intercept, what that tells me is that the slope is undefined, and an undefined slope is straight up and down. So when I graph this, what I'm going to do is actually find where x is equal to 4 on the y-axis or on the x-axis. So that would be right here. I just go 4 to the right, and then I draw a line up and down. And that's my answer. So when I get x equals some number, it's just a line up and down. If I were to get y equals some number, it would be a vertical line, or I'm sorry, not a vertical line, but a horizontal line. So for example, if I had like y is equal to 2, my graph would look something like this, because I find where 2 is on the y-axis and then draw a straight horizontal line. But those are your only two special cases that might occur. And there we have it, graphing linear equations.